Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and welcome if you're brand new as well to a very exciting episode for me personally, which is we are covering the PlayStation 2 this week in ranking every game that I've ever played. And the reason the PS2 is so exciting and special to me is because this is kind of the first console that I would ever say was like mine, like a console that I owned and bought. Well, I didn't buy it technically, but you know what I mean, like it was mine, like I didn't have to share it with anyone. And it's also the first console where I've actually played a considerable amount of games as well. I mean, here it doesn't necessarily look like a massive list, but when we go through them, it will take a bit of time to go through. But for the age that I actually got my PS2, which was probably about 7 or 8, something like that, I think it's you know, not a too bad range of games. We've got some really great ones in here as well. I'm sure you'll agree. And I might end up cutting this into 2 parts if it goes on too long because of how many games there are. So if it comes up to like being, you know, best part of an hour, I'll probably cut it into 2. So if you are hearing me say this, then it means I've cut it into 2. And the second episode will go up tomorrow. So do one of them today, and then the next one tomorrow. So yeah, we've got a lot of really good games to get through, and yeah, I'm really excited for this. So I'm just going to start straight away. So yeah, let's go. And the first one is 50 Cent. Bulletproof, the first of 2 50 Cent games I think that was ever released. There was another one called Blood in the Sand, which I never ever played. But 50 Cent Bulletproof was an interesting one. It's sort of weird because I never thought I would ever play a game that's like, you know, based around 50 Cent. I did quite like rap music at the time, but I never really got into 50 Cent that much. And the sort of premise of the game, I don't remember the story at all, but it's just 50 Cent showing how much of a big, you know, gangster he is by kind of going around killing a lot of people. And there was some cool stuff in it, like, you know, whenever you got a kill on someone who was like the last in the area, the bullet would go slow-mo through their head or wherever you shoot them, and that was quite fun. But for the most part, I think it was quite pointless. Wasn't really that interesting. Didn't do anything unique to a lot of other games that were coming out about this time. So for me, I think it's just okay, because I did still have a bit of fun with it, so I wouldn't say it was poor. Just okay for me, I think. Black, I remember there was a lot of attention in the press and magazines and stuff about this game as a first-person shooter, and I think that's mostly because of the destructible environments that were being used. And you know, the graphics at the time, yeah, probably they were quite good as well. When I look back on it, they don't look amazing, but for the time they were probably quite good. And yeah, like I say, the destructible environments and the gameplay as a first-person shooter, it was somewhat impressive. But it's not like when when you think back of historic first-person shooters, this isn't one that always comes up, obviously, because you think back further in time to things like Doom or Wolfenstein, stuff like that. But I think Black, for what it was a good game. I definitely enjoyed it a lot, and I played it a lot. And the fact that it managed to get quite a bit of press based on it being sort of having the destructible environments and things like that is quite impressive as well. So I would say it's good. Brothers in Arms Road to Hell 30, I think this is one that a lot of people really like, and again it was one that, you know, was quite critically praised. I definitely heard it talked about a lot in magazines and stuff, but personally when I ever tried to play it, I think I played maybe 10-15 minutes and I just got quite bored of it. And because of that, I'm going to have to put it, unfortunately, in barely played. Yeah, I don't think I ever really got past like the first mission, for example. So I can't say whether it's good or bad in that way, unfortunately. Bully, which I always know as Canis Canem Edit because that's what the kind of original title was. I've had a bit of a frustrating history with this game because on the one hand, I absolutely love the game. Bully's a great game, really, really good, fun and interesting. Definitely unique as well, and it's one of the better sort of Rockstar IPs. However, I think it's quite a widespread issue that when I had it on PlayStation 2, for some reason one of my saves got corrupted, and I thought it was a problem with the disc, so I kept actually changing the discs and buying it over and over again to try and make it work. And whenever I tried to play it, even if I had a new memory card in the slot and then I had a different disc as well, it kept saying that I wouldn't be able to save it or I think even play it because of the corruption. And that really annoyed me because it meant that I wasn't really able to play it after a certain point. And so it wasn't until then the 360 version came out, which was called Bully Scholarship Edition, that I was then able to properly play it again, and was a lot better for it because obviously, you know, it was a jump in the generation, so it played a lot better as well. Bully itself, if we're taking away the technical issues that I had with it, it's a well. I think most people would want to put it in outstanding, and I kind of do, but because of the technical issues that I had with the PS2 version, I'm going to put it in great. However, I think I might be doing this, I might be ranking it again when it comes to the 360 generation videos, so there's a good chance that when we get there I'll put it in outstanding, but for now I'm just going to put it into great. Right, Burnout 3, there's two Burnouts here, Burnout 3 and Burnout Revenge. Is it Revenge or is it Takedown? I can't see the title. Okay, so the first one's Takedown, then it's Revenge. So Burnout 3, I definitely played it. However, in comparison to Revenge, where I played it like a lot, unfortunately I don't really remember it. And you know, when I've seen footage of it, I think okay, it kind of looks familiar to me, but they're quite similar in the way they look and play, these two games. So I don't know if that's just me getting them confused because they both do look quite similar. But I don't really remember Burnout 3. However, Burnout Revenge I did play an awful lot, and I do remember it. And if you haven't played them, the Burnout games, they kind of take the racing game formula, which had gotten quite stale at this point with Need for Speed and things like that kind of already dominating. But the focus around Burnout is that you're kind of deliberately made to want to destroy other road users and crash as much as possible and sort of build up like a money meter based on how much destruction you can make. And that, I think, made it really, really unique and interesting and definitely fun to play, and especially when the effects and the physics and everything was so well incorporated to make that happen that it really stood out as being a fun and interesting game. So I would say it's a great game. And then what's next? Crazy Taxi. I think this was like an arcade game first, because I remember it being in arcade places when I was little, on actual arcade machines, but I don't know if that's because it was so popular on the PlayStation or anything like that it came to there, or vice versa, where it was popular in the arcades and then came to the PlayStation. But on the PlayStation I definitely played it, and I think it's definitely a classic game, Crazy Taxi. You know, many people I'm sure have played it, but I would say it's just okay, because I found it quite frustrating a lot of the time, even though it is kind of fun, but navigating is just an absolute nightmare. Which I guess is kind of the point, because it is called Crazy Taxi and it's just all over the shop. But I never really loved it that much that I would play it all the time. I'll just kind of jump in and out here and there. We've got two Destroy All Humans. I'll do the first one first. I don't know why it puts them in this order, because it's meant to be alphabetical, so I don't know why it's putting the numerical one before. But anyway, Destroy All Humans 1 is brilliant. I mean, they're both brilliant, and especially if you've played the remake of Destroy All Humans recently, which I have, it's, you know, an absolutely brilliant remake. But the first Destroy All Humans, I would put it in great. And of the two, it's the one I played the most and the one that I actually remember the most, because the second one I kind of vaguely remember it in the sense of how when it was set in the 70s and that kind of hippie movement era, and being in London as well. But apart from that, I really don't remember it at all, unfortunately. I think mostly, you know, it's the same game as the first one, but it's just set in a different time and place, so that's the only difference really that I can remember. Dog's Life, I think, is one that very few people have played, actually. I never ever hear people talk about it when they talk about PlayStation 2 games. But I bought this... No, I didn't buy it, sorry, I rented it. We rented it because I just thought that's a really interesting and unique concept for a game, you know, playing as a dog. And you can definitely do a lot of things that dogs do. You know, you can bark at people, you can, you know, urinate and defecate if you want. You go around with like smell. I think they do call it smell-o-vision or something like that, where you actually see like scents out in the world and you can go and collect them. And I don't know what you do with them, but you just collect them basically. And the story is you're like on the run from dog impound people, so you're just trying to get away from them. And I think maybe you're trying to find a friend dog of yours who's been kidnapped or something. So you kind of go on this big journey. And unfortunately, I never really got past the first couple of levels. But I definitely enjoyed it. I kept going back to it a lot, just because it's such a unique concept, playing as a dog, or at least at the time it was. So I would say it's good. Yeah, I don't think I would say it's better than that, to be honest. I think it's more my nostalgic memory of it that I put it as good. Again, no one ever really talks about it, or I've never really heard people talk about it. So yeah, just good. Driver parallel lines. Now we did talk about the previous driver games in previous videos. How 1 and 2 they're just kind of they're pretty much the same, and they're not that great. You don't really do that much. And in Driver 3 you can actually get around with weapons and stuff, so it's becoming a bit more of a GTA style game. And then Driver Parallel Lines did something different where it sort of goes back and forth between time periods. So I think you're either in the 70s and you're in like a kind of muscle car with a revolver and like, you know, proper 70s outfit. And then otherwise you're in the present day, I believe. And unfortunately, I don't really remember anything more than that. So even though I know that I enjoyed it when I played it, I can't bring anything specific to mind where I would be like, okay, I know, I remember it. So yeah, unfortunately, just going to go and don't remember on that one. Evil Dead, I'm not really going to waste any time. I thought this was quite awful. I've never really seen any of the Evil Dead movies or anything like this. Don't really know the character. And we rented a lot of these games. Actually, you'll find we rented because it was just better back in the day to just go to Blockbusters every weekend, rent a couple of games, finish them by the end of the weekend, and then send them back rather than spending 40 quid every time you want to play something. But yeah, this one we rented, and thank God I didn't buy it because I just didn't enjoy it. It was absolute trash as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I'm sorry if you like it, but it is just garbage. Family Guy. Now this was a much better game than I anticipated. It's because I wasn't at the time as well. I was sort of starting to get into Family Guy. Not quite a huge fan of it at that time because again I was still quite young, but I was sort of starting to get into it. So I at least knew what it was, and I understood the humor, kind of humor. And the game I didn't have any high expectations of or anything like that. I just thought it'd be like, I guess maybe similar to Simpsons Hit and Run again, which we'll come to in a bit. But the Family Guy video game was definitely a lot better than I expected. And it does take a lot of things from episodes from back in the day where it incorporates it into the game. So again, similar to Simpsons Hit and Run, some of the more famous episodes at that time were had stuff in there that was reflected in the game, and you could interact within the levels. So yeah, I probably would just put it as good. It wasn't, like a great, amazing game that's going to change the world, but it was quite good, yeah. From Russia with Love. Okay, so now a lot of people when they talk about 007 games, always comes up as probably the best is GoldenEye. Unfortunately, I've never played GoldenEye, even though I probably should have, but it's just never crossed my path, unfortunately. But 007 From Russia with Love, a friend of mine in school, in secondary school, had a copy and then they lent it to me. And for me, it was an absolutely brilliant game because you got to use his gadgets, of course, and the gameplay was really fun. So, for example, one of the gadgets I think is like a little remote control helicopter, and you can use that to get into secret areas and then unlock those areas to then go in and get new resources or upgrades, stuff like that. And you could drive around in an Aston Martin that's got the machine guns on it and go around blowing up cars. You could do so much, so many cool things in it, and considering that the film would have come out, probably 40 years before the actual game, it's quite strange, but definitely they did a really good job of adapting it. So personally, I'll put it in outstanding. Really, really fun. Brilliant James Bond game. Unfortunately, like I say, I haven't got GoldenEye on here. I never played it, but for a James Bond game that I have played, this one is definitely the best. Okay, Futurama. Again, similar to Family Guy, I guess. I wasn't expecting a huge amount, and maybe because it's a cartoon video game, but I was again expecting more Simpsons Hit and Run aspect to it, and in a way it does, because you do get to play as different characters from Futurama, and they all have their own sort of powers and abilities, and the level designs are different for each one. I actually enjoyed it more than the Family Guy game. and again, similar to whichever one it was, Dog's Life. When I was saying it's quite underrated, like not many people really know, ever played it or talked about it. But I would say it's great. It's a really, really good game. I don't really know how to describe it other than it's kind of the Simpsons hit and run, but in the Futurama world. And I don't think it's not like open world like the Simpsons is, but the actual world that it does create, like the level designs are really fun. They're more similar to how like when we talked in the PS1 episode that I did, that like it's kind of more of a 3D collectathon in these sort of set out linear levels. But there is a little bit of open worldness to it. So yeah, that's great. God of War, I played around a friend's house, and then he lent me the game because I really, really enjoyed it. But for some reason it didn't work on my PlayStation, and I don't know why it was, because the disc was working perfectly fine in his PlayStation, and we did wonder whether it was because he had a PS2 Slim and I had just a regular PlayStation 2. But that shouldn't make any difference. So unfortunately I did barely play it. It was literally just for a couple of hours around my friend's house, and then after that I never managed to get to it. And then I never played any of the sequel ones as well, because it just wasn't. I got put off from that first experience where it's like, okay, it doesn't work, and I didn't want to risk it again by playing the others. So yeah, unfortunately I did barely play it, even though I know that it's, you know, a classic game and it spawned off this big franchise. So yeah, unfortunately. Now we're getting into some of the biggest PS2 games. You know, these are classic sort of ones. GTA 3. This is where, for me, GTA really takes off. 1 and 2 and London, yeah, they're okay. You know, I wouldn't say they are ones that are all-time. Well, I guess they are classics, but they, you know, they're kind of stepping stones to leading to this bigger thing. It's not until GTA 3 where the formula really starts to get into something that's going to, you know, really rock it off. And the fact that it went into 3D at this point, I think, helped it enormously, as well as the gameplay just being generally more fun. I think part of that is because you can tell where you're going a lot better, and the gunplay is a lot easier. Well, not necessarily easier, but you know, you can actually aim at people properly, and all the characters are really good, and the levels are fun, etc., etc. So, GTA 3 is it is a great game, yeah, and I think more so because it did start. That's where it started to really kick off this franchise. But then going into Liberty City Stories that we have here as well, it's set in the same city. But this game was released, you know, quite a few years after GTA 3, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years later. And I've played every GTA game, but unfortunately, Liberty City Stories, I don't remember at all. I don't remember any of the missions, don't remember any of the characters, don't remember any of the, you know, differences between that and GTA 3. So yeah, unfortunately, I just don't remember it at all. Okay, GTA San Andreas. I probably would get, you know, publicly executed if I didn't put this in outstanding, wouldn't I? Because yeah, you know, that is absolutely a console, well, generation-defining game between the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, and you know, it's one of the best-selling games of all time, even still to today, probably because people are still buying it on PC, PS4, PS5. You know, they still got it on the game stores and stuff like that. So, of course, it's outstanding. You know, it takes what was great about the previous ones, GTA 3, Vice City, puts it in this enormous open world at the time, with 3 different cities, huge land, countryside with mountains and the ocean as well. You know, you can actually go swimming in the ocean and see all these lovely sea creatures, turtles, blah blah blah. You could customize your character. You know, get haircuts, tattoos, make them fat, make them thin, make them muscular. All the characters are so memorable and unique, and the story is just fantastic. Arguably the best GTA game that has ever been. I would sort of slightly agree, but I'm always torn between this and Vice City, which we'll come to in a second, but it's definitely one of the best games that has ever been made, especially, and obviously one of the best GTA games that has ever been made. So yeah, it has to be outstanding. There's nothing else it can be, really. Vice City Stories, I do kind of remember it, and it was definitely a lot better than Liberty City Stories, and I think part of that is because Vice City, I think, is a better location in general. But I do kind of remember some of the characters and the gameplay, but it's not so deeply stuck in my mind that I can really rank it any higher than I don't know, maybe I can, because I think I do remember it a decent amount. So I'm going to put it in good just for the sake of argument, because I don't really want to keep putting stuff in here, because I do still remember it a bit anyway, and I do remember it being actually quite good. In fact, I do remember at the time thinking that I might have preferred Vice City Stories to Vice City itself, which probably looking back is not true. But at the time, it just felt a lot smoother and the gameplay was a bit more fun. I think there was more stuff you could do with it, so I think that's probably why that I would, at the time, consider it better. But then Vice City, yeah, no, it is definitely better in hindsight. At the time, yeah, I did struggle between these two, because I think, oh, you know, Vice City Stories is a bit newer, looks a bit better, blah, blah, blah. But Vice City, yeah, I'm always torn with it, and GTA San Andreas, it has to be an outstanding for me. I'm not sure how I feel with GTA 5 in relation to these two games, whether I'll put them on the same bracket, even though I know that GTA 5 is, of course, an absolutely incredible game. But Vice City and San Andreas, I'm always really torn between which one I prefer. So I'm going to have to put them both in outstanding. And they are both outstanding games in their own right anyway, even if I didn't think that they were so close together in terms of how I feel about them. They are, yeah, again, both games kept pushing forward this franchise, so you have to give credit to that at least anyway. Right, Gun. Again, it was one that we rented because, you know, so many of the games that here we're going to rent just because it was cheaper, like I said. And at the time, I absolutely loved Gun. I never really played a West. In fact, I don't think I'd ever played any Western game before this that I remember. But this was definitely the first main Western game that I ever played. Even though later on we do have somewhere, where is it? Red Dead Revolver. But Gun, it really stuck in my mind. I played it through many, many times. There's so many cool things you could do with it, like hunting rare animals, mining for gold, obviously going through the main story, getting horses, upgrading your guns, blah, blah, blah. However, unfortunately, I think a couple of years ago I was sort of watching a playthrough of it on YouTube, just for kind of nostalgic sake, because I remember enjoying it so much. And I've got this really horrible feeling that looking back on it when you watch it, the tone of it is so very, unfortunately, racist and pro-white American colonization. And of course, you know, it's a Western, it's going to do that anyway, but to the point where it's very, very derogatory about Native Americans, which is very unfortunate. And if that's the case, it would, you know, kind of ethically or morally, I would want to put it in something like awful. But I have to treat it just as a game, how much I enjoyed it, how fun it is actually to play. You know, if we kind of ignore the story stuff, I think it's quite a good game to play, just if you're going to have fun with it and not take the story to heart or anything like that. Again, unfortunately, looking back, I do believe that it is quite badly littered with unfortunate, you know, pro-colonialist ideologies. But again, it's a Western. What can you do? So yeah, I'm not going to put it higher than that at all. Again, I could easily put it down here because of that, but I'm not going to go too much into the politics of it. Yeah. Okay. So, and then Hitman Blood Money. Now, I'm currently working on a Hitman video. I don't know if any of you have seen. I've done a video on The Last of Us 2, critiquing it and why it's such a hard time. The next video that I'm going to be doing, I'm currently in the writing stage of making a critique of the recent Hitman games, the World of Assassination trilogy. And I do reference older Hitman games in the sense that Blood Money I played a bit, and I think I might have played some of the other ones as well. Actually, no, I didn't. Sorry, it was just Blood Money. But I kind of get confused with whether I've played the other ones because it's just so long ago. And I really wanted to enjoy it, but I've never been a fan of stealth games, really, to be honest. And the older Hitman games, they just don't play well enough for me, and they never did play well enough for me at the time as well, for me to really get invested and interested in it. And I know they're such classic games, and a lot of people really love them. And this is something that I talk about in the Hitman video that I'm going to be doing. But Hitman Blood Money, I know that people absolutely love it, and you know, if I played it properly, I should put it in great. I really should. However, unfortunately, I feel like I did barely play it. I remember the bits that I did play, but I never got very far through the first level, and I would keep giving up each time. I would think, no, this isn't for me. I'm not Not a stealth person at all. Don't really understand why you would want to play a game so slowly, but that was me at a much younger age. So kind of forgive my ignorance on it, but unfortunately, yeah, that's just how it is. Jaws Unleashed. One thing that you have to say about the PlayStation 2 era, and yeah, I guess that would include the original Xbox as well, but if we're just talking about PlayStation 2 here, this is kind of the generation of fantastic licensed games. There are so many absolutely incredible licensed games that you would never really expect. I mean, yeah, there's some rubbish ones as well, which we'll talk about in a minute, but there's some absolutely banging classics, absolute all-time stone cold classics. And Jaws Unleashed has to be one of them. This is, just one of those games that, again, if you didn't play this, I kind of feel like you didn't play, or you missed out on a big part of what makes this generation so special. And luckily, we got a bit of not a remaster of this, but we got a new game called Maneater recently, which is very, very similar in the sense that you are playing as a shark and you go around eating things in order to upgrade. And, that's kind of a spiritual successor to Jaws Unleashed. Jaws Unleashed on its own at the time, it was an absolutely great game. Had exactly what you wanted from a Jaws game. You're playing it as a really awesome shark, eating people in a sort of this semi-open world, I would say. Being able to find license plates as collectibles, opening treasure chests, and just all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to say it's a really deep philosophical game or anything like that, but gameplay-wise, this was definitely one of the highlights of the PlayStation 2. And yeah, I'm just really glad that I got to play it at the time because, again, so many great licensed games, and that was amongst one of the best ones. I think that Juiced is quite an underrated series. There was only 2 games, but I really enjoyed them, and especially as Need for Speed again kind of was taking the monopoly on these kind of street racing games. This was doing things a bit differently. Like the customization of the cars themselves was so ridiculous. I think on the box, they advertised the game as having over 1 trillion different unique customization options for the cars, which is just astounding. That's how much customization there was. So there was 1 trillion unique permutations of different car setups that you could have. And the gameplay itself was fun. There were some really nice cars in there, and I do think it was an overlooked series. I really do. I would say that Juiced 1 was good, and then Juiced 2 kind of took that and improved on it in subtle ways. It made the gameplay a bit more fun, improved the graphics, obviously changed up the cars and stuff like that as well. So I'm going to put that one, because of that, in great. But yeah, overall, those two, that whole series, I think was quite overlooked, to be honest. And then the first Killzone, I definitely played it and somewhat enjoyed it as a first-person shooter. But yeah, I just don't really remember it at all. I don't think I played it enough for it to be stuck in my head, especially when I had other games that were at the time coming out similar. So like Black, for example, was a first-person shooter. Was more entertaining to me and a bit more, gritty and alive. Killzone was just kind of a bit bland and boring. And even recently with Killzone Shadowfall, which I think is the only other Killzone game I've really played, wasn't really that interesting, to be honest. It was just quite boring. And the first, same as the first one, so I'm just going to put it in Don't Remember. And then going back to the theme of awesome licensed games, Peter Jackson's King Kong. I think if you had a PlayStation 2 or an Xbox and you played this game, you know just how fantastic it was. And I'm very, very tempted in putting it outstanding. And I think the main reason for that is not just because the actual first-person shooter elements of it are great, but you actually get to play as King Kong as well, in various levels on Skull Island and in New York City. And that just made the game so much fun, so unique as well. So, I'm gonna stick it in outstanding. I think it was an absolutely fantastic game, and hopefully you agree as well if you've played it. Okay, guys, I think that's gonna do it for this first part of the episode. So, like I say, gonna do the rest of it tomorrow. The rest of the games. Hopefully, you've enjoyed it so far. Make sure you subscribe to keep up for the episode tomorrow and all the future ones. And if you have enjoyed it, then please go back and watch the previous episodes, just so you can kind of catch up with where we're at in terms of my history of games. So yeah, second part tomorrow. Hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.